as a manager or as a leader, you have to be a coach. You need to spend time to people. You need to enable them. Fixing the plastic waste problem, you're fixing a little bit of everybody's problem. There is action in inaction in a way. So as you focus on smaller things, the big complication tends to sort themselves out. I think the energy transition is not going to go as we think it will.
Okay. Welcome to Business Minds. Today we're delighted to receive Mathieu Rondeau, Chief Financial Officer of the International Economic Forum of the Americas. Mathieu, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you and share some of my personal experiences. Thank you very much.
Very pleased. Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to ask you to define your role and explain to us your main responsibilities in just a few words.
Okay. Well, I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the International Economic Forum. The International Economic Forum is a global company specialized in event planning, not your traditional wedding planning, but we organize large geopolitical and economic conferences around the world. And I'm in charge of financial management. So that includes all of the actual International Economic Forum, but some of the entities that are also related to the International Economic Forum. So it's a group of 6-7 companies.
Excellent. We might dig into that a bit more later. So first of all, when we look at your career, the first question we would like to ask is to understand where all that started. So my first question is pretty simple. Where did you grow up? And what kind of job were you dreaming of doing as a kid?
I actually grew up around Montreal. I wasn't born here. I was born in Syracuse University. I was born in Syracuse, U.S., on the campus of Syracuse University.
Okay.
Then the family moved to New Brunswick. So my early age were in New Brunswick. And then we moved to Montreal. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. As a child and as a kid, I actually wanted to be an astronaut. So.
Okay.
My fondest memory growing up was, the moon and stars in general. And then after that, it got a little more precise. Actually, I wanted to become an astrophysician. So
okay.
Very early, I was attracted to everything related to the universe.
Very interesting. We'll see how it shifted to what you have done now. What kind of personality traits did you exhibit in your younger years?
I think as a kid, I had one of the strengths that I think I've developed early is I had a good attention span. So I would say, a really calm kid with the ability to focus. I'm not going to say I was a loner, but I would sometimes be able to spend time on my own, reading little books, doing my little projects, doing my little thing. I think overall, I think I was quite a simple kid, not too agitated, very curious, loved to learn very early, develop a passion for learning, for reading. That's and also I was born in a very stimulated family environment. So and my brother was a very active sports person. So at the same time, I had the balance of my older brother, and I was also into sports and stuff. So I think I was a pretty balanced young little kid, but very curious and love to learn.
Okay, and so with this dream of the moon and stars, with the sportsy kind of atmosphere at home, were there any signs that you would pursue a career in business later on?
I don't think so. I think very early it was more science related. I think my passions were more science related. But my grandfather was an entrepreneur. So I had that as an example. We used to spend a lot of time with my grandfather. He owned several garages. He founded some of the first cooperatives of milk in Quebec. So I guess I was able to relate to that. But my first, I would say, entrepreneurship business started more in my CEGEP years. So I started my first little project then. But very early, I don't think there was any particular sign that I was going to end up in business. It came a little bit further, a little bit later.
Interesting. And so what kind of studies did you pursue? And did you already have a clear goal in mind of where you wanted to do with it?
No. I don't think I had a clear mind. I had clear passions.
Okay.
So when I finished my high school and CEGEP, I was a lot into the environment, already a lot into geography. So I went to Montreal University to do an undergrad in environmental geography at the time. But this was more because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, and I was doing a bit of business projects on the side. And I really went into something that I really loved, which is what I've done. After that, being attracted to business, I went to the HSA to do some additional undergrad studies in marketing. And then I really knew I loved business. So I tried a few business ventures. I was getting into the business world. And it's after, I would say, a few challenges in business that I decided to pursue, graduate studies. Then I went to do my MBA, and then I did a postgraduate studies in accounting, financial management, and so on. And so I went to school for a long time. But it started with a program that I just really loved. And at the same time was doing business ventures, which was a little strange. And I had to decide after my undergrad was do you go into the field and put on your white robe as a scientist and collect samples on the ground, or you try to do business. And I'm a little older than you are, so back at the time we were in the middle of the technology bubble. So it was also a good time for young professionals to make money and to be part of this internet tech bubble. Which was not a bubble at the time, it became a bubble. And so I was attracted. I moved from my study field to the business world. And from there, I decided to go and study to become better at it. And I think I had good instinct, but I kind of needed the academic background. And that's where I went back to school to get that confidence and stuff, and just help me being a better business manager, I guess.
Very interesting.
Business
And
leader.
so you mentioned your grandfather, who was an entrepreneur. Who were your inspiration figures and your role models growing up, whether it's within your surroundings or out of it?
This is a simple, but I mean, obviously, my parents were role models for me. So I want to make sure that this is there, because close families are are always very important. So my parents were very good role models. Beyond this, I would say my role model growing up were really scientists. So I was fascinated by the Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr and the great minds of physics that helped us understand the world. A lot of philosophers. Those were people that I would say were some of the role models. Gentlemen like Hubert Reeves, who passed away very recently, was somebody that also was kind of a role model on many fronts for me. So not a lot in my early years business-related model. I would say they were more science and philosophy, and those were the people that were really kind of role models for me at the time.
Very interesting. And so within these first few years, did you ever envision yourself to becoming CFO of an international firm, organizing conferences at the time?
Maybe not in the capacity of a CFO. Working for an organization such as this, probably this. I'm very passionate. I love learning. I love everything that relates to the world in general, and I love every topic. I love energy. I love what we do here. Did I envision being in the capacity of CFO? Probably not, but at the same time, being CFO of an organization is probably one of the best roles, because you get to be at the strategic level, you get to be at the decision making level, you touch upon everything, you're an intrinsical part of the organization. So I don't think I had a vision of the exact role that I was going to do, but being a CFO and the skill set that I developed allowed me to be part of an organization that, yes, I think I not this one in particular, but something along those lines was something that I definitely would have envisioned back at the time.
Interesting. And so after these studies, how did your career start? I would say, what was your first job? What was the entry point?
Well, I was mentioning some early business ventures. I think people of my generation will relate. There was a time where I think one of my first ventures was to put PCs together. Before PCs became what they are today. You had a couple of us got together and we started to sell PCs. We would build those PCs and sell them to businesses and individuals, and that business became non-competitive fairly quickly. But at the time, it's one of those little things. We started a painting company as well when I was in CEGEP, and we would do that instead of being hired in the summer. We would create our own jobs pretty much, but. Again, this was a bunch of very funny anecdotes with those things. But I think beside the little jobs that I would have had, I think the first opportunities I got into business was exactly when I was mentioning after my undergrad studies. In the last semester, I went to a trade show at I don't remember if it was Place Bonaventure. I think it was Place Bonaventure. And again, this was the era of the development of internet and tech. And there was a tech conference in Montreal. And I got hired to do translation. So there was this American company. And the owner was a guy from California. He was into data storage at the time. And he needed someone to do translation. And I was like, okay, good. And I ended up working at his booth and doing translation for him, Spanish, French, and English, because they didn't really speak French. And then after the trade show, he's like, I'd like to do an offer. I'd like to give you an offer. Why don't you work for me and stuff? And we want to develop Canada and so on. And I ended up working from home, which not COVID related at the time, but I ended up working from home and doing some business development and try to bring business. And I was very successful. And within about a year, we actually opened an office here. So I was responsible to open an office for his business. I was young at the time, and funny enough, you don't really know at the time. Guess where I opened the office? On Crescent Street. Being downtown was fun, and he's like, we got to open an office. Okay, we're going to open this office on Crescent Street. Back in the time, Crescent Street was the place to go, so it was 12 6th Street, Crescent Street. So that was, I would say, my first real job, and kind of, other than the little ventures that I've done and the small jobs that you do as a student or whatever.
Excellent. And so can you walk us through now the main steps of your career, the key turning points that led from this first job to what you have done afterwards?
Well, this first job, again, we're still in that tech bubble. I'm going to use this phrase because it was big at the time. Internet was new and technology companies were developing and everything. Working with that company opened doors for me to go work for UUNet after. And UUNet was the largest IP network in the world. It had been developed by John Sidgmore, the founder of the TCP/IP protocol. And UUNet was was the largest internet service provider in the world. And they had an office here. They had made an acquisition in Montreal. And I went to work for a gentleman, Robert Quantz. If he listens to this, Robert Quantz is still a friend. He's a phenomenal, he was a phenomenal boss, but I consider Robert to be a friend. He had been bought by UUNet, and I was able to join. And it was mostly in sales. So I came in, and this was the time where everybody was excited about growing networks. Everybody needed internet, and we were selling it. And stayed there for a few years, and then I moved up in the company and moved into the rank and so on. And so this was exciting, but as you know, the internet bubble burst. And then at that point, I also decided that I joined a little startup at the time that had developed a proprietary product, which was, I want to say, I don't want to sound a little bit, but it was the precedent or predecessor of the cloud. So the vision was kind of a remote service, everything being hosted centrally and delivering services via an internet connection where businesses would, they wouldn't have anything internally. So it was kind of, but it's going to sound strange, but it was the vision of the cloud at the time, very, I guess, a little different, but that's what it was. And the business was really too early. So first, the tech bubble was bursting. At the same time, to deliver those services, you need a good SLAs on network. You needed to have reliable networks. The reliability wasn't there. So that didn't really move forward. Then I went back into the telecom world for a couple of years. And after that point, that's where I went back into mining, and I went back to Rio Tinto. And I went back to school and everything. So after this little venture, I guess I was explaining that I went back to school later. That's when I figured out I needed a little more, I want to say technical knowledge or financial knowledge, and that's when I decided to go back to school. At the same time, I started to work for Alcan at the time, which ended up being bought by Rio Tinto and so on. So at the same time, I went back to school, and then I went back to school for about 5-6 years to do those two graduate degrees.
Okay, and so you have gone through very different industries. You mentioned energy. You also worked in telecommunications. How do you navigate through all these fields, which are very different from each other?
Yeah, I think that the connection between why I ended up in metals and Rio Tinto and mining and is kind of a natural, because as I explained earlier, my kind of first undergrad, and I've always been fascinated by the science aspect of it and the geology and so on. So this was kind of coming back. Telecom, I want to say in between those telecom and tech projects were probably more related to the context. You know, those were the emerging really industries. That's where a lot of the money was. That's where a lot of the opportunities for young people, you know, you wanted to make money, you wanted to do things. This was what was exciting, I want to say, you know. So maybe that had a lot to do with it, because, you know, you're out of school, you get offered an opportunity into a field that you don't really know, you're not necessarily passionate about, but it, you know, it gives you a tremendous opportunity to grow as a business person. And I think that's why I ended up mostly in those fields. Now coming back to Rio Tinto, this was kind of a natural, in terms better aligned with my passions, if you want, or fields that I really loved.
Okay.
And Rio Tinto bought Alcan. I decided in 2013, 2014 to start a company called Soleco Energy. For different reasons, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about this. And that led me to a series of decisions and so on. I really lived full-fledged the development of a company. It had its ups and downs. Did some consulting on the side as well during that time, because when you're starting a company, it's at some point before it starts being commercial and so on, you have to find other sources of income. And so on. So this is what led to telecom. I worked here for the forum as well during that period of time. I came here to work for about 1.5 years as a vice president. Continued to work on the company. Company continued to evolve, and I've been here now for several years now here at the International Economic Forum.
And so you mentioned you entered in the forum as a vice president.
Yeah.
How did you get into it? How did you transition to such an organization, which is very different from the
because I was always on the other side with the forum. So I was always really passionate, but as an attendee. So I was always invited to the conference. I would attend the conference. I would, you know, I want to say, you know, since the mid-2000s, I had been going to the conference. I know Nicolas Rémillard personally. And it became logical. There was a specific things that he needed. So I joined him back in 2016 and 17. Yeah. So again, always was fascinated about what this organization does, the type of content, the ability to really put people together, to find solutions on the most pressing issues. So the mission is something that I'm really, that I really connect to.
Excellent. And so can you tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day job includes right now as a CFO?
Yeah. Well, the job of a CFO, I think, is first being part of the management team, so oversee everything that has to do with the strategy and key day-to-day decision makings that are not only related to finance. They're, you know, especially when you're in the medium-sized organization such as this one, you're part of every meaningful decision. They can be HR, finance, and everything. So being part of that strategic management day to day is obviously part of my role. Managing the human side, I'm a big believer that ultimately, as a manager or as a leader, you have to be a coach. You need to spend time to people. You need to enable them. You need to show them something. Don't believe the theory is one thing, but you need to show and spend time and understanding and motivate. And so a big part of my job is that, making sure you have the right people in the right position and you enable them. When this is fulfilled, then obviously I supervise the more technical aspect of my work, which is, our budget, our cash flows, or managing our treasury, our agreements with the financial institutions, and so on. So those, I would say, are more the day-to-day technical stuff. So it's along those lines. Every day here is different. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Absolutely. And so you touched a little bit earlier about your tech company, if I may call it that way, Soleco Energy. Now's the time. Can you tell us a little bit about it, how it started, what's the mission behind it?
Soleco, I started it in 2013, 2014. At the time, I was hoping to build a company that was going to take organic waste produced by mainly agricultural, farms and so on, and produce energy with it. This is a concept that is known now, biomethane, biogas production. But if you remember back in 2013, 2014, this was relatively new. The Quebec government had announced significant financing for private sector companies that would get into that field. And we tried at the time, I founded the company to build a project in that space. And after about a year and a half or 2 years, we quickly noticed that the market wasn't mature. It wasn't ready for it. Whether it was the energy price that you were going to be paid for what you produce, whether it was the type of contracts that were being proposed to private promoters, such as the ones we were inadequate. So it was very difficult for the private sector, well, at least a small company, to get into that space. And the proof is now you're seeing that space, we're starting to see momentum. You're starting to see relatively big size infrastructure being built in biogas productions. And unfortunately, it's only big size companies that can play in that space. And from a Quebec perspective, a lot of these companies are foreign companies. So we went to do a bit of consulting after. So after this project not be able to be developed in Quebec, we did a bit consulting. And then it's 2018 that the current mission of the company started. So what is Soleco today? It's a startup in advanced recycling of plastic waste. So we're in our 4th years of product development. So it's not commercial yet. This year is the last year pre-commercialization, developing a proprietary technology. So see it as a company that takes all of the bad plastic that you hear about and has a proprietary technology to do added value product with it. And we like to think that we're a practical solution provider for the plastic waste problem. So I think we look at the world with realistic lens, and we deliver a solution that could really have an impact on plastic waste in the world. So, yep, that's
very interesting. Again,
that's the mission of Soleco.
Yeah, you kept saying we. Who did you fund it with? Did you start alone? How did it work?
I started alone, but as we went through the different phase of financing, then Soleco now is several shareholders and partners and so on. It grew beyond my initial vision. So I'm still active, on the board. I still participate in decision making, but now it's really multiple stakeholders, multiple people. We have received financial support from all of the layers of government. So whether from the federal, from the provincials, from municipal, support of different funds and banks, and we're developing an innovative technology. So everybody that you can think about that is involved in funding clean tech technology or innovating clean tech technology has been, indirectly or directly involved into our project.
Excellent. And so how today, nowadays, how can you manage to your time between your CFO role with the forum and your involvement with Soleco? How do you manage to balance this?
There's a team running the day-to-day at Soleco, so I don't get involved into the day-to-day. It's a challenge. You have to manage your time effectively, but I rely a lot on my team, and then we'll see what the future holds.
Very interesting. And so both in your CFO role and your involvement still with Soleco, what do you like most about your job?
Here at the forum, it's, every day you are connected to what's going on in the world, the key issues, what are people that can, whether are actors in it or they can help any kind of situation, you're always around it. You're, through our events, through what we do, we get to facilitate discussion, you get to meet those individuals, you get to participate, to hear, we like to think in a way influence. Well, I'm not sure if we go that far, but I think we are participating in this global story that gets written every day, and that's exciting. So that I would say is what really drives me here at the forum, and that's why I'm happy to come in every day. And Soleco is about, it's nothing less than having an impact in the world and for the sake of future generation and trying to tackle one of the most, if not the most pervasive environmental problem in the world, which what are we going to do with all this plastics that's everywhere? So that will keep you want to wake up in the morning and trying to, do the extra hours that you were referring to. It's not easy, but, I think those two things are why I dedicate so much time of my day-to-day working and trying to manage that.
Excellent. And so in the same line, what are you most proud of in your career as of today?
What am I most proud of my career? Oh, I'm going to say maybe something that I think if you were to speak with the people that work with me, for me, and everything, I think they will say that I'm an enjoyable, I'm a good employee, I'm a good boss, I'm someone that's fair. I think I leave good impression with the people that I work with. I develop long-term relationship. I'm proud of the people that I've met. I'm proud of my circle of friends, of supports and everything. So, and a lot of it comes from the professional side. So I think that's one of them. Something I'm really proud. If you were to ask people what they think of me, then not that I'm really worried about what people think of me, but it's those relationship or something that I've built over the years that I'm really proud. Definitely. If I'm to go into specific for Soleco, for example, pre-COVID, we were on a momentum, and then when COVID hit, clean tech technology were the last worry of everybody, right? The government decided to support the companies that were well established, that were making profits, and the companies that were in development stage or that were not making money, they didn't access to grant, they didn't get the support, and the company's still there today. So just managing through this and making sure that, the company still has a chance to execute is something that I'm really, really proud, because there was a lot of time where, it would have been easy to give up. So those relationships, and a lot of them are business relationships, it's probably what I'm most proud of. If I'm to give a specific example of an accomplishment is really go through as an entrepreneur these very tough times and still be there today standing and be able to talk about it.
Excellent. So you mentioned the COVID situation. We like to ask, what is the biggest crisis you ever had to face and how you were able to manage it? Was the COVID situation the one in your career path?
Yeah, you have to see it in a way where, pre-COVID, you're a startup company. you have millions of dollars signed up, and you're supposed to build a big plant, and within a month, your whole business plan kind of goes down the drain. You're producing some kind of synthetic oil. You're producing an energy product, and the selling price of that energy product is negative. So your whole business plan is down the drain. You have to shut your plant. People are leaving. So I think this was tough. Certainly one of them. There's been a few over the years. I mean, there's been its fair shares of ups and downs, but I think that's a really good example of a crisis that we had to manage.
Yeah, very valid points. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I can go back to this venture that I said, this cloud venture where they're all proportionate to what you live. I was a lot younger, I had less money, and I lost the money that I had as a young man, right? So losing this money today would be, okay, it's not a big deal. But at the time when it's all you have and you're young and you invested it and you're 26 years old and it seems like the end of the world. So I guess it depends in time where you are. But there's been its fair share of crises over time.
Interesting. And so all throughout these experiences, what would you say are the most important skills that you have acquired?
The most important skills that I have acquired, resilience would have to be one of them. This is something that's very difficult, but to be able to, and I don't do it as well as I would like to. I'm better at it. So, but to really focus on one task at a time or one day at a time, to be able to compartimenter, and I don't know how you would say that in English, but to really say, okay, I can't think of 3 days from now, and this is difficult, but now I have to do this, and I'll focus on this, and things will solve it. That's very difficult. The human brain tends to think about everything down the road and what's going on, and it's got a tough time focusing on little tasks and progressively get to where you want to. And it hasn't been easy for me to develop that skill over the years. I think I'm better at it. So I like to think that this is
good one. That's very
going
interesting.
better.
Yeah. And so within all of the different roles that you have experienced, has your personal mission evolved throughout it? Because it seemed like you always managed to go where your interests lied.
I think there's a recurring theme now that I want to make a difference, and not really for myself. It's not me that really wants, but I want to be part of the solution. So I think you see that with my resilience into this clean tech company, and going through the storms and continuing and wanting to develop a technology that's going to, fix this plastic waste problem. And here, being part of an organization that wants to be part of making the world better and connecting people. So I think the recurring theme is about making a difference and facilitating, making things progress, go forward, being part of the solution, I think is one central theme that over time, I'm kind of discovering it's always what drives me ultimately. So,
excellent. And through all this, what would you say, which accomplishment had the biggest impact to fulfill this mission of yours?
Well, I have to say, the founding and going through the time of this clean tech company. I think it's. It has evolved to something different today, which involves more people. It's not necessarily my project anymore. But I think this, again, expressed very well what I was saying, the desire to, fixing the plastic waste problem, you're fixing a little bit of everybody's problem. You're fixing the city's problem, the government, you have to look at this from a societal perspective. There's easier problems to tackle if you just want to make money, than trying to fix the city's waste management problem. There's easier ways to go.
Yeah, and so I would like to dig into that a bit more specifically.
Yep.
Since you have also been into the energy field, how do you see the future of energy, whether in Canada or even in the rest of the world?
That is a really big question.
With all the uncertainty that we're going
It's a
through.
topic of interest. How do I see the energy? I I think the energy transition is not going to go as we think it will.
Okay.
Um,
Also,
I think what we're trying to achieve and everybody's goal will create a huge pressure on metal resources, on natural resources. I think the numbers are very difficult to reconcile. So I think when everybody talks about renewable energy and the transition and everything that it implies, I don't think we understand what it means financially, what it means as pressure in the natural world in terms of metals and resources. So I'm not a prophet. It's very hard to imagine how that will unfold. I just don't think it will unfold the way mainstream media or what we're being pushed right now. So, and we can go into details, and I'm not sure it's the topic of this conversation, but I think if from an energy perspective, we will go back to a lot more realism. And then hopefully we're going to look at this as well, with an equality perspective. So I think one of the biggest challenges in energy is as simple as, energy and GDP and economic developments are really tied. If we're going to be using less dense energy and we're going to spend this, like how we're going to enable the developing world to develop itself. Who are we to say you can't use fossil fuels and now you're going to do that and you're going to do that? So how do we reconcile all of this from an energy perspective? It's a very complex topic, but again, I'll wrap it in the way where I said I just don't think the energy transition will go as some people think it will go.
still on the theme of energy and linking it to the forum of International Economic Forum, with all the conferences, did you ever see differences in opinion from different countries? Do you believe every country has a different view on energy as of today and for the future?
I think so. I mean, energy is a very, countries look at it as they should within their own borders and what's good for them. A lot of them don't have energy production capability, so they have to look at it with different lens. Maybe it's a little bit what I was trying to say, that when you're going to look at some of the largest some of the largest energy consumption country in the future, whether it be India and China, they're going to want to have that energy. They're going to want to be able to keep using coal and gas and fossil fuel for their energy mix. So everybody will look at the world to protect their national interests. So for sure, when you're attending conferences, you're going to have the French perspective with the role of nuclear and how they want to go about it, and you're going to have the Germans that are obviously facing serious energy related complications. I'm going to use this term, and then the U.S., which has their own views of the world, and that's changed over the last 15 years. If you look at the kind of discourse you would have gotten at our conference 15 years ago and how it shifted about 10 years ago, it's always moving. It's always depending on their interests. So for sure, you get multiple views. You tend to get some consensus. So I think our conferences are good proxies to see kind of overall shifting of, for example, on nuclear. We're seeing that now people want to talk about it. That would not have been the case in 2018, 2015.
Okay. Yeah.
Now you see that everybody is ready to speak about it, is kind of getting open to it. Now, is that a phase? Time will tell, but So we'll see those macro trends in terms of people thinking on big issues. But if not, yeah, national interests and energy-related policies are very different, depending on their own respective requirements and situations.
Thank you very much for this. And so, taking maybe a step back, what do you think young professionals who are entering the business world today should focus on the most in order to have their career progress in such a complicated, complex world?
Well, my number one tip is to really do what you love. And this is very simple, it's very cheesy, but I think ultimately you should really work into something that is meaningful to you, that you're passionate about. So for sure, to anybody, whether in my family or so on, or people that I get a chance to talk to, I think, that's very important. I think developing the right sets of skills is probably going to be also important. I'm at this generation now where, I'm seeing the skill sets of younger people and what you're going to be needing in 20 years. Well, I'll probably be out of the workforce, and I can see that sometimes I'm a little bit behind on certain things. So I do things that the young people will have to develop the skill set that will be needed in 2035, which
Do you have
is...
any examples of these?
Well, I think understanding the computer languages, programming, simple things, your relationship, the ability to leverage artificial intelligence, whatever that means. I'm not trying to go in through, the space of AI, but I use it in the day-to-day to do minor things. For sure, this will be transformative, and so you want to be able to understand that. How will you be a leader? Your emotional intelligence, how will you adapt to the new reality of the new workforce? That's also a skill set that leaders and people are going to need to develop and understanding. So I think that's also important, I would say, having the right skill set for what you're trying to do, and really usually going into a field that you really love and what you're passionate about solves all of these little things.
Very interesting. And in the same kind of lane, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And would you give the same piece of advice to your 20-year-old young self?
I was given that advice, by the way. I didn't invent this advice on follow your passion. I think it's, if anything, it's a little bit out there. A good piece of advice that I would say that I got was, again, more philosophical, and it goes back to what I said earlier about being able to do things in step. And when the complications or the problem looks big, just narrow it down to actions after actions. And when you tend to do that, things tend to sort themselves out as well. So there is I'm going to use the term, there is action in inaction in a way. So as you focus on smaller things, the big complication tends to sort themselves out. And I was explained that by a mentor that I had over time. And when you put that into action sometimes, when there is a problem and you let it sit and you focus on small portion of it, things tend to resolve themselves. So I don't know if I answered the questions, but this is a piece of advice that I was given and that I saw in action, and that has helped me deal with complexity as of the day-to-day and big business problems when they come up. And
no, that's a very good one. Thank you very much for this. So now we'll move on to the last few questions of this interview. First of all, with your rich path already, what do you have left to accomplish?
You mean professionally?
Mostly, but it can be personal as well.
Well, professionally, I think I still have everything to accomplish. It's been fun so far, but when I say I'd like for what we're doing here at the forum, starting the clean tech company, I'd like this to see, happening. Continue to live it, continue to make the forum grow, continue our impact, grow other conferences around the world, bridge people together. And in terms of the clean tech company, well, on the day-to-day, tackle more of the waste problem and fix it and do it. I think I still have so much that I have to do. So this is on a professional side. I like to hike. So on the personal side, there's a lot of mountains that I want to go up and I want to go on top of, and so that I also have a lot of objectives there in terms of different mountains I'd like to go up.
Yeah, that sounds also like a very good metaphor to have things to accomplish. Mountains is the best metaphor you can get.
I guess, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And so now, if you could have a private meeting with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
With one person, look, I have to say Albert Einstein. I have to say I go back to my idol of my youth. And, there's wisdom and so much complexities in that human being. There's something about having changing the world just in his mind. There's something about the story of Albert Einstein and developing a new understanding of physics in mental images, and actually, it turning out to be true. There's something, and just he was a philosopher at the end of his life, and again, he's my youth hero. So I would have to say, but there's many people. I mean, Nelson Mandela. I mean, there's a few people. And Martin Luther King. I mean, but yeah, if I had to choose one, which would be sad, but I would choose this one.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good one. Now we'll ask a few personal favorites.
Yeah.
Starting with, what book inspired you the most?
What book? I'm sure you're referring to business book.
No, it can be anything. Anything.
Let's go business book. Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham, Good to Great, Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell, even the 7 Habits of Effective People, Stephen Covey. So I have a few, Dissolution of Madness of Crowds. So I have many business books that are, I love Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. So this is an old Chinese philosopher. There's so many of them.
So
many
already,
philosophers. Yeah. I like to read Nietzsche there's so many of them. One is difficult. I name you a few in business.
Perfect. That is a solid list. Thank you very much for this. Last personal favorite. What's your favorite quote?
Favorite quote? Well, one that I really relate to, and I think it's, again, I'll go back to Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said that the level of thinking that got you where you are today is not the one that's going to get you to where you want to be. So always first being open to what, where you are today, what you've been thinking, how you've been doing things, and not take this for granted that this is going to be what will take you to where you want to be. So always challenge yourself, always reassess what you're thinking, and be humble in a way that, okay, you might have achieved something, but it's probably not what you need to get to where you want to be. Please don't quote me on the exact words. This is what was meant, but I'm not sure was exactly the word, but that quote stuck with me over time. There's so many of them, but this one,
that was a very good one, yeah.
I'm connecting it to my hero that you said that I would like to sit with.
Perfect. And so this leads us to my last question of this interview. What can we wish you for the future?
What can we wish you for the future? This is depends how deep you want me to go, but I think without help, you're nothing. Without family, you're nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, what you can wish me is to stay healthy and for my family to stay healthy and to have a happy family life. So that would be first. So if I was to ask for one thing you can wish me, that would be it. And then continue to have the friends that I have and continue to be able to be happy with what I do. and to, again, execute a bit on the mission we talked about, which is to change the world here and change the world with what we're trying to do with Soleco.
Excellent. Well, Mathieu, thank you very much. This concludes this interview. So this was Mathieu Rondeau on Business Minds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But yes, I've done a lot of martial arts in my life.
Oh, wow.
So, and I've studied some of the standard, traditional Japanese philosopher and Zen philosophy. So I am attracted to Japanese culture, but I have yet to visit the country.